A word before we begin. Dear friend, pull up a chair. Let me tell you a story. It's the kind of story my grandmother might have shared on her front porch. Sweet tea, sweating in the summer heat. Crickets singing their evening hymn. The kind that stays with you long after the telling is done. This is a story about the judgments we make too quickly and the truths we discover too late. About a young man who thought he knew exactly who deserved his anger, and a young woman who carried secrets heavier than the golden suitcase she never let go of. In the small fishing town of Foggy Harbor, Oregon, two lives collided in the most unexpected way. One was fighting to save his mother from fading into the fog of memory. The other was racing against a clock only she could hear. This isn't a story about wealth or poverty. Not really. It's about what we leave behind when we go and whether love, real love, needs words at all. So settle in. Pour yourself some coffee if you've got it, and let me tell you about the suitcase that changed everything. The suitcase weighed 7 pounds. What it held inside weighed more than Kalen Ashford could carry for the rest of his life. He sat on the weathered park bench overlooking Foggy Harbor's lighthouse. The Pacific stretching gray and endless before him. Salt hung thick in the air, that particular Oregon coast smell of brine and kelp and something ancient. The wind cut through his jacket, sharp as a blade, numbing his ears and making his eyes water. Below the cliff, waves crashed against black rocks with a rhythm older than any hymn, every 12 seconds. The lighthouse beam swept across the water. He'd been counting without meaning to. The golden suitcase rested on his lap, scuffed at the corners now, brass latches tarnished from months of salt air. 6 months ago, he would have sneered at this thing, called it everything wrong with people who had too much money and too little soul. Now his hands trembled as he opened it. 47 cassette tapes. Each one labeled in handwriting so careful it must have cost her precious energy she didn't have. Dates, names, subjects. Mama's Navy stories, October 3rd. The lullaby she sang to baby Kalen, October 17th. Her mother's apple pie recipe, November 2nd. And, at the bottom, one tape separated from the others, wrapped in a pale blue ribbon. For Kalen. Play last. His throat tightened. Beside him, an elderly woman with snow-white hair stared at the lighthouse beam as it swept across the water. A hand-knit shawl, the kind church ladies made for the sick and grieving, wrapped around her thin shoulders. She didn't recognize him. She hadn't recognized him in weeks, but somewhere on these tapes, she remembered everything. "Mama," Kalen whispered. Marin Ashford turned to him with the polite smile she gave strangers. The same smile she'd probably given hundreds of wounded soldiers in that Navy hospital. Decades ago. "Such a lovely evening," she said. "Are you waiting for someone, young man?" He couldn't answer. The words stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. The foghorn moaned in the distance, a low, mournful sound that seemed to come from the sea itself. The lighthouse beam swept past again. Kalen picked up the tape marked "Play Last" and turned it over in his hands. The label on the other side read the truth about the girl with the golden suitcase. He had spent months hating Aurelia Vane. He had called her cold, heartless, a symbol of everything unfair in this world. He had been so sure he understood her. Lord, he had been so terribly, unforgivably wrong. The tape recorder sat heavy in his jacket pocket, an old portable model, the kind they'd stopped making years ago. He pulled it out, fingers numb despite the wool gloves Mrs. Pemberton had knitted for him. The ocean whispered against the rocks below, steady as a heartbeat. His mother hummed a tune she couldn't name, something from a life that slipped further away each day. It sounded like an old Motown song, maybe, or a hymn. Hard to tell anymore, and Kalen pressed play. A voice came through the small speaker, thin, tired, but unmistakably hers. "If you're listening to this, I'm already gone, and I need you to understand something before you spend the rest of your life feeling guilty." He closed his eyes. The lighthouse kept turning. The foghorn called out across the water. And the story of Aurelia Vane began to unfold not as he had written it in his anger, but as it truly was. 6 weeks earlier. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. 5:30 in the morning. The cannery stank of brine and fish guts. Kaylin Ashford's hands moved through the assembly line on autopilot grab. Gut, toss, repeat. Silver scales stuck to his forearms like glitter that wouldn't wash off. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow. In the corner, an old transistor radio crackled out the morning farm report, then switched to Marvin Gaye. One of the old-timers hummed along, his voice rough as sandpaper. Kaylin's fingers were raw, cracked at the knuckles. The salt got into the cuts and burned, but he'd stopped noticing weeks ago. Grab, gut, toss, 4 more hours until class. Outside, a ship's horn moaned in the harbor. The smell of coffee drifted from the break-room cheap stuff, bitter as regret, but hot. Foggy Harbor, Oregon. Population 4,200 and shrinking. The fishing industry had been dying for 20 years. Victorian houses lined the streets with peeling paint and for sale signs that nobody answered. On Sunday mornings, the bells of St. Matthew's still rang across the water, calling the faithful few who remained. The community college sat on the hill like an afterthought, a place for folks too stubborn or too broke to leave. Kaylin was both. His apartment was a converted garage behind Mrs. Delphi's house. 1 room, a hot plate, a mattress on the floor. The wall above his desk told the story he lived every day. Payment schedules. Past due notices stamped in red ink. A spreadsheet handwritten, because he couldn't afford a computer calculating how many hours he needed just to keep his head above water. And taped in the center, a newspaper clipping worn soft at the edges. Vexlar Pharmaceuticals raises memory drug price from $47 to $890 per dose. Beside it, a note in his own scrawl, Vane family, 12% stake in Vexlar. On the nightstand, a photograph a young woman in a Navy nurse uniform, holding a newborn baby. Her smile was wide, unguarded, the kind of smile that believed in things. That woman now sat in a nursing home bed, forgetting her own name. Kaylin struck a match, lit the small candle beside the photo, something she'd taught him when he was young. "For those we carry with us," she used to say. "The flame remembers when we can't." The match burned down to his fingertips. He shook it out, $4,700 a month. That's what it cost to keep her somewhere decent. He grabbed his jacket, passed the little church on Maple Street where Mrs. Delphi was already arranging flowers for Sunday service. She waved. He waved back, but when he arrived at Tidecrest Manor that evening, the front desk nurse stopped him with a strange look. "Mr. Ashford, there's something you should know. Your mother, she's been talking about someone named Lily." Kaylin frowned. His mother didn't have a daughter named Lily. She didn't have a daughter at all. Psychology 201. Tuesday morning. Room 114. The fluorescent lights hummed the same dead frequency as the cannery. Kaylin slid into his seat near the middle row. A photocopied textbook balanced on his knee. 10 cents a page at the library. 30 pages a week. It added up. But buying the real thing wasn't an option. The room smelled of chalk dust and stale coffee. Someone had propped open a window, and a salt breeze drifted in, mixing with the warmth from the old radiator clanking in the corner. Chairs creaked as students settled in. A girl in the front row unwrapped a granola bar, the crinkling sound too loud in the quiet. Professor Whitmore stood at the front, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that droned like a broken refrigerator. Today, we'll examine the psychology of wealth and empathy. Studies suggest that increased socioeconomic status correlates with decreased ability to read emotional cues in others. Kalen's pen moved across his notebook. He wrote down every word. Couldn't afford to miss anything. The door at the back of the room opened. That sound. He knew it before he turned. Wheels on linoleum. The soft click, click, click of a suitcase rolling across the floor. Aurelia Vane. She walked past the rows without looking at anyone, pulling that golden suitcase behind her like it weighed nothing. Her face was pale, always pale, dark circles under her eyes that her money apparently couldn't fix. She sat in the back corner. Same seat every class, right next to the emergency exit. Kalen watched her open her laptop. She never took notes, never raised her hand, never spoke to anyone. Just sat there like she was too good to participate. His grip tightened on his pen. "Let's open this up for discussion." Professor Whitmore said, "Can the wealthy truly understand suffering, or does privilege create a fundamental barrier to empathy?" A few hands went up, the usual folk students who like to hear themselves talk. Thatcher Briggs leaned over from the seat next to Kalen. His breath smelled like energy drinks and last night's cheap beer. "Ask Miss Moneybags over there," he whispered. "Her family owns half the pharmaceutical companies in Oregon." Kalen's jaw clenched. He thought about the newspaper clipping on his wall, the $890 per dose. His mother's face when she couldn't remember his name. His hand went up. Professor Whitmore nodded. "Mr. Ashford." Kalen stood. The chair scraped against the floor. The sound echoed off the cinder block walls. "I have a question," he said, "for Miss Vane." The room went quiet. 23 heads turned toward the back corner. Aurelia looked up from her laptop. Her expression didn't change. Kalen's voice came out steady, controlled, the words he'd been wanting to say for months. "Your family profits from Vexler Pharmaceuticals, 12% stake. If I recall, they raised the price of memory medication from $47 to $890 per dose." He paused, let it hang there. The radiator clanked. Someone coughed. "My mother has Alzheimer's. She can't afford her medication because of companies your family invests in." The silence pressed against his eardrums. He could hear his own heartbeat. "So I'm curious. Miss Vane," he tilted his head, "would you like to enlighten us about empathy?" Aurelia stared at him. Not angry. That was the strange part. He expected anger, defensiveness, some rich girl outrage. Instead, she looked at him like she was memorizing his face, like she was filing him away somewhere important. Her lips parted. She took a breath to speak, then stopped. Her right hand moved to her chest, a small gesture, almost invisible. Her fingers pressed against her sternum for just a second. Her face tightened, then smoothed. She closed her laptop, stood up, grabbed the handle of her golden suitcase, and walked out. No defense, no explanation, no words at all. The emergency exit clicked shut behind her. The room erupted in whispers. "Did you see that? She just left to Kalen. That was something else." Thatcher clapped him on the shoulder. "About time someone said something to her." Professor Whitmore cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the class, but Kalen barely heard him. He sat back down. His heart was pounding. Adrenaline coursed through him like he'd just won a fight. He got her. Finally. Said what everyone was thinking. So why did something feel wrong? The image kept replaying in his mind. Her hand moving to her chest. That slight wince she tried to hide. The way she'd looked at him not with hatred, not with contempt, but with something else entirely. Something that looked almost like recognition, almost like understanding. The girl next to him, a sophomore named Bridget, leaned over. "You notice she always sits by the door," she whispered. Kaylin frowned. "So, every single class, same corner, like she needs to be able to leave fast." Bridget shrugged. "My grandmother had panic attacks before she passed. Did the same thing at church every Sunday, always near the exit." Kaylin turned back to his notes. Panic attacks, rich girl problems, but that night, lying on his mattress in the converted garage, the candle flickering beside his mother's photograph, he couldn't sleep, her hand on her chest, the way she stopped mid-breath, the golden suitcase she never let go of. What was in that suitcase? 2 weeks later, Tuesday afternoon, the cannery's refrigeration unit had broken down at 11 in the morning. Fish spoiling, workers sent home. 8 hours of wages Kaylin couldn't afford to lose, but there was nothing to do except leave. He checked his watch. 1:47 p.m. Too early for his tutoring session, too late to pick up a shift somewhere else. His feet carried him to Tidecrest Manor without thinking. He'd visit his mother, sit with her for a while, maybe she'd have a good day. The nursing home parking lot was half empty. A salt breeze rolled in from the Pacific, carrying the smell of kelp and diesel from the fishing boats below. Seagulls circled overhead, crying out like lost souls. Kaylin pushed through the front doors. Something was different. Fresh flowers sat on the reception desk, yellow roses in a glass vase. The kind Mrs. Henderson sold at her shop on Main Street. The carpet in the lobby looked cleaner. The fluorescent bulb that had been flickering for months was finally replaced. From somewhere down the hall, he could hear a television playing The Price is Right. The smell of chicken soup drifted from the cafeteria real soup, not the canned stuff they usually served. A new face behind the desk, young woman, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a hand-knit cardigan that reminded him of something his mother might have worn. Name tag read Waverly Pemberton. Administrator. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Marin Ashford, room 12. Waverly smiled. "Oh, Mrs. Ashford, she's in the sunroom right now. Down the hall. Last door on the left." Kaylin frowned. His mother never went to the sunroom. She hated leaving her room. The unfamiliar spaces confused her, made her anxious, sent her spiraling into that dark place where she didn't recognize anything at all. "You sure about that?" "Positive. She's been there most of the afternoon. Having a real nice time, from what I hear." The hallway smelled like disinfectant and something else lavender, maybe. Potpourri and little dishes on the windowsills. That was new too. Kaylin's sneakers squeaked on the linoleum. He heard it before he reached the door. Laughter. His mother's laughter. He stopped walking. That sound. He hadn't heard it in how long, 6 months, 8, before. The disease took her sense of humor along with everything else. Before it stole her stories, her recipes, her knowledge of his name. His chest tightened. He moved toward the sunroom door. It was cracked open. Afternoon light spilled through the gap, warm and golden. Dust motes floated in the beam like tiny stars. He looked inside. His mother sat in a wheelchair by the tall windows. Sunlight fell across her white hair, turning it almost silver. A hand-knit blanket, blue and green. The colors of the sea lay across her lap. Her hands weren't in her lap, though. Someone else was holding them. Kaylin's eyes traveled up. Dark hair, pale skin, a gray cardigan that hung loose on thin shoulders. Aurelia Vane. The golden suitcase sat open on the floor beside her. Kaylin could see inside it now, not jewelry, not designer clothes, tubes, wires, a small machine with blinking lights, humming softly like a heartbeat. A thin cord ran from the machine up to Aurelia's chest, disappearing beneath her sweater. On the table between them, a small recording device. The red light was on. Recording, Aurelia held an old paperback book, worn spine, yellowed pages, the kind you'd find at a church rummage sale. She was reading aloud, her voice soft and measured, like each word cost her something. I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship. Marin's eyes were fixed on Aurelia's face, clear, present, more lucid than Kaylin had seen her in weeks. Read that part again. Lily, his mother said. I always loved that part. Aurelia smiled, gentle, patient. Of course, Mama. Kaylin's hand hit the door. It swung open. The hinges creaked. Both women turned. Marin's face shifted confusion first, then that polite blankness she wore with strangers. The light in her eyes dimmed, just slightly. Aurelia's expression didn't change. She looked at Kaylin like she'd been expecting him, like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. What in heaven's name are you doing here? The words came out louder than he intended. His voice bounced off the sunroom walls. A bird outside the window startled and flew away. Marin flinched. Her grip tightened on Aurelia's hands. Lily, she whispered, who is this man? Why is he so upset? Aurelia's thumb stroked the back of Marin's hand. Slow, soothing, the way you'd calm a frightened child. It's all right, Mama. This is a friend of mine. He's just surprised to see me here, that's all. Friend. The word landed like a slap. Kaylin stepped closer. His eyes went to the suitcase, the tubes, the machine. I asked you a question. What are you doing with my mother? Aurelia stood slowly. The cord from her chest stretched taut for a moment before she adjusted, moving the suitcase with her. The machine's hum shifted pitch, then steadied. Not here, she said quietly. Not in front of her, please. I want answers. Right now. Marin's lower lip trembled. Her lucidity was slipping. Kaylin could see it happening, like watching sand run through fingers, the confusion flooding back in, erasing whatever light had been there moments before. Lily, don't leave. Please don't leave again. You just got home. Aurelia's jaw tightened. Something flickered across her face, pain, maybe, or something deeper. She turned back to Marin, took both her hands. I'm not leaving. Mama. I'll be right back. I promise you. She leaned down and kissed Marin's forehead. Soft, tender, the way a daughter might. Then she walked past Kaylin, so close he could smell lavender soap and something clinical underneath. Antiseptic. Hospital. At the door, she paused. Her voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. The lighthouse. Sunset. If you want to know the truth about this suitcase, about everything, meet me there. She didn't wait for his answer. The wheels of the golden suitcase clicked against the floor as she walked away. Kaylin stood frozen in the sunroom. His mother had already forgotten the confrontation. She stared out the window at the ocean, humming a tune he almost recognized. Sounded like My Girl, or maybe a hymn. Hard to tell anymore. On the table, the recording device's red light was still on. He picked it up, rewound the tape, pressed play. His mother's voice crackled through the tiny speaker, clear and strong. I named him Kaylin because it means keeper of the fire. Something about that just felt right. You know, I looked at that tiny baby in my arms and I knew this boy was going to carry something important, something that would outlast me. The recording clicked off. Kaylin's hand shook. How long had Aurelia Vane been visiting his mother, and what else was on those tapes? The lighthouse stood at the edge of the cliff like a sentinel, watching the dying day. Kaylin climbed the narrow trail, his sneakers slipping on loose gravel. The salt wind cut through his jacket, sharp enough to make his eyes water. Below, waves crashed against black rocks, sending spray 20 feet into the air. The smell of seagrass and wet stone filled his lungs. She was already there. Aurelia sat on the old wooden bench facing the ocean. The golden suitcase rested beside her, its brass latches catching the last of the sunlight. The machine inside hummed steadily, a mechanical heartbeat that seemed to keep time with the waves. Kaylin stopped 10 feet away. "You came," she said. She didn't turn around. "I want answers." "I know." The lighthouse beam began its rotation. In 12 seconds, it would sweep across them both. The foghorn moaned somewhere in the distance, low and mournful, the sound carrying across the water like a prayer. Aurelia patted the bench beside her. "Sit, please. This will take a while. And I can't." She paused, took a careful breath. "I can't stand for long." He didn't sit, not yet. He stood at the weathered railing, hands gripping the wood until splinters bit into his palms. "Talk." Aurelia nodded, slowly. She unlatched the suitcase and opened it fully. Kaylin had glimpsed its contents in the sunroom. Now he saw everything. A compact machine, matte gray, no bigger than a lunch pail, 2 tubes running out of it, digital readouts blinking in green and amber, a battery pack, backup syringes in sealed plastic, medical tape, gauze. The tubes disappeared into the left side of her chest, beneath the collar of her sweater. "It's called an LVAD," she said. "Left ventricular assist device. My heart can't pump blood on its own anymore. This machine does it for me." She said it the way someone might describe a broken carburetor. Matter of fact, clinical. "My grandmother had the same condition, dilated cardiomyopathy. Runs in the family, the doctors say. She carried her device in this very suitcase until the day she died." Aurelia's fingers traced the golden lid, worn smooth from years of handling. "I have maybe 6 months, probably less." The lighthouse beam swept past. Kaylin counted the seconds without meaning to. 12, always 12. "That's why you never talk in class." He heard himself say, "Every word costs energy. Extended conversations put stress on the pump." She looked at him, her eyes steady. "I'm not cold, Kaylin. I'm not stuck up. I'm rationing what little time I have left." The wind picked up. Aurelia pulled her cardigan tighter with one hand. A church bell rang somewhere in town, 6 o'clock, calling the faithful to evening service. The sound drifted across the water, thin and distant. Kaylin's mind raced. The emergency exit seat, the early departures, the way she touched her chest when he'd confronted her. "The nursing home," he said. "Explain that." Aurelia nodded slowly. Tidecrest Manor was 60 days from foreclosure. The previous owner couldn't make the payments. State regulators were preparing to shut it down and transfer all the residents to a facility in Salem. 3 hours away, a place where Kaylin couldn't visit every day, where his mother would be surrounded by strangers who didn't know her stories, her songs, her fear of thunderstorms. "How do you know that I bought it?" She said it simply, like she was talking about picking up groceries. "Through a trust, anonymously. 6 months ago." Kaylin's grip on the railing tightened until his knuckles went white. "You bought a nursing home." "I bought the nursing home where your mother lives?" "Yes." The words hung in the salt air between them. "Why?" His voice came out rough, scraped raw. "You don't know me. You don't know her." Aurelia was quiet for a moment. The machine in her suitcase hummed. A seagull cried overhead, circling against the orange sky. 8 months ago. I read an article in the Foggy Harbor Gazette. Local student works 3 jobs to care for adoptive mother. There was a picture of you at the cannery, another one of you at the library, helping some kid with his homework. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of newsprint, soft at the edges from handling, handed it to him. Kaylin unfolded it. His own face stared back at him, younger by less than a year but looking decades more hopeful. Before the latest round of price increases, before the 3rd job, before he'd started measuring his life in dollars and hours. "I researched your story, found your GoFundMe page, saw you'd raised $1,100 in 4 months toward a goal of $50,000. His throat tightened. "Then I researched my own family. The Vexlar investment. The drug pricing decisions. Aurelia's voice dropped. I can't undo what my family's money has done. I can't fix the system. But I could fix one thing, one family, one mother who deserved better. Kalen turned away from her, stared at the ocean. His chest felt tight, wrong, like all the anger he'd been carrying had suddenly lost its target and didn't know where to go. That doesn't explain the recordings, he said without turning around, or why you're playing make-believe with my mother. I'm not playing. She calls you Lily, her daughter. She doesn't have a daughter. I know. Then why do you let her believe? Because it brings her peace. Aurelia's voice cracked, just slightly. Kalen turned. Her eyes were wet. She wiped them quickly with the back of her hand. Your mother has a story in her head. A daughter named Lily who went away and never came back. I don't know where it comes from, maybe a dream. Maybe a memory that got scrambled. Maybe a wish she never told anyone about. But when she sees me, something in her mind says, daughter, says Lily. And for a few hours each week, she has peace. She paused, took a slow breath. The machine hummed. Is that so terrible to give a woman a few hours of comfort? Kalen's knees felt weak. He gripped the railing harder. The recordings, what are they for? Aurelia reached into the suitcase and pulled out a small fabric pouch. Inside, dozens of cassette tapes in plastic cases, each one labeled in her careful handwriting. Your mother is disappearing. Kalen. Every day. She loses more of herself. But sometimes she has these moments, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes if we're blessed, and in those moments, she remembers everything. She held up a tape. Navy Stories, October 3rd. She told me about treating wounded soldiers in Da Nang, about a young private named Jameson who sang Motown songs while she stitched up his leg, about the letter she wrote to her own mother that never got mailed because the post office got shelled. Another tape. The day she found Kalen, September 15th. 3 days old. Abandoned in the maternity ward. She was on shift. She said you looked at her like you already knew her, like you'd been waiting for her your whole tiny life. Kalen's eyes burned. He blinked hard. I'm building a library, Aurelia said. A library of your mother's memories, before they disappear forever. She pulled out a tape player from the suitcase. Small, portable, the kind they stopped making years ago. Do you want to hear one? Kalen couldn't speak. He nodded. Aurelia pressed play. Static. Then his mother's voice clear, strong, present in a way he hadn't heard in months. I named him Kalen because it means keeper of the fire in Gaelic. I read it in a book of baby names at the hospital gift shop, bought it for 50 cents. If you can believe it. I knew from the moment I held him, this boy would carry something important, something that would outlast me. He would keep the fire burning long after I was gone. A pause on the tape, the sound of Aurelia's voice, gentle. He sounds like a good man. His mother's reply, he is. He's so tired, my boy. Works himself to the bone for me. I wish I could tell him, I wish I could make him understand that he doesn't have to earn my love. He's already got it, and he's always had it. Kalen's knees buckled. He grabbed the railing with both hands. His shoulders shook. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. But no sound came out. Just the wind, and the waves, and the foghorn calling across the water. The lighthouse beam swept past. Aurelia didn't move toward him, didn't try to comfort him. She just sat there, the machine in her chest pumping steadily, giving him the space to feel whatever he needed to feel. When he finally straightened, his face was wet with salt from the sea spray. Maybe. Or something else. How many tapes? His voice was hoarse. 47, so far. He turned to look at her. Really look. 20 years old. Dying. Spending her final months recording the memories of a stranger's mother. Why me? He asked. There are thousands of families dealing with this. Why mine? Aurelia smiled. It was sad and tired and something else he couldn't name. Because you were angry enough to fight for her, and because— She stopped, looked down at the suitcase. Because my grandmother died alone, in a facility where no one remembered her stories. I was 14. I sat by her bed and watched her fade, and there was nothing left of her when she went. No recordings, no letters, nothing but a suitcase and a heart that couldn't keep beating. She met his eyes. I made a promise to myself that day. Never again. Not if I could help it. The sun touched the horizon. Orange and pink spread across the water like something from a painting in the church fellowship hall. Kaylin walked to the bench, sat down beside her. Not close, but not far. I called you Heartless, he said quietly, in front of the whole class. You didn't know. I should have asked, instead of assumed. Aurelia turned to face him. The dying light caught her eyes. Then let's start over. She held out her hand. I'm Aurelia. I have about 6 months to live, give or take, and I want to spend them doing something that matters. Kaylin looked at her hand. Thin fingers, pale skin, the faint outline of medical tape beneath her sleeve. He took it. Her grip was weak, but warm. I'm Kaylin. I work 3 jobs. I haven't slept more than 5 hours a night in 2 years, and I've been so angry for so long I forgot what it felt like to be anything else. The lighthouse beam swept across them both. Aurelia didn't let go of his hand. Would you like to help me? She asked. With the recordings, your mother responds better when you're there, even when she doesn't quite recognize you. Kaylin looked at the fabric pouch of tapes, 47 pieces of his mother, preserved in plastic and magnetic ribbon. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. They sat in silence as the sun sank below the Pacific. The machine in the golden suitcase hummed its steady rhythm. The church bells rang again 6:15 now, faint and far away. After a long moment, Aurelia spoke. There's something else you should know, about what happens next. Kaylin tensed. What? I'm getting worse, faster than the doctors predicted. She reached into the suitcase and pulled out a small brass key. When it's time and it's coming soon, I need someone to continue the memory library, to keep building it after I'm gone. She pressed the key into his palm. I'm asking if that someone can be you. Kaylin stared at the key. The weight of it felt impossible. What if I'm not ready? Aurelia smiled that sad, tired smile. Nobody ever is. She closed his fingers around the key. But I've watched you. The way you show up for her every single day, even when she doesn't know your name, the way you keep fighting when anyone else would have given up. The lighthouse beam swept past one more time. You're already a keeper of the flame, Kaylin. You just haven't realized it yet. The foghorn called out across the darkening water. And somewhere in Kaylin's mind, a question formed. If she had only 6 months when this started, how many did she have left now, and how much of that precious time had she already spent on his mother, on this town, on him? 3 weeks changed everything. Kaylin learned to read the signs. The slight tightening around his mother's eyes when confusion crept in, the way her fingers would flutter against the bedsheet when a memory tried to surface, the particular tilt of her head when she was about to slip away into that fog where he couldn't follow. He learned to be ready. Tuesday evening. The sunroom at Tidecrest Manor. October had settled over Foggy Harbor, painting the maple trees along Main Street in shades of rust and gold. The smell of wood smoke drifted through the open window, mixing with the lavender potpourri Mrs. Pemberton kept on the windowsills. Aurelia sat in her usual chair, the golden suitcase open beside her, humming softly. The recording device rested on the table. Red light steady. Kaylin sat across from his mother, holding her hand. Her skin felt papery, thin as the pages of the family Bible she used to read from every Sunday. Marin's eyes were distant. She'd been gone for 3 hours now, present in body, absent in mind. Staring at the window, humming fragments of songs from another lifetime. "Tell me about Da Nang again," Aurelia said softly. "The hospital there." Nothing. The boy who sang Motown. Private Jameson. What was his favorite song? Marin blinked. Her humming stopped. Private Jameson. Her voice came out thin but clear. 18 years old. Shrapnel in his left leg. Lord have mercy. He sang My Girl while I picked out the pieces. Said it kept him from thinking about the pain. Kaylin's breath caught. Aurelia's hand moved to the recording device, adjusting the volume. Did he make it home? I don't know. Marin's face clouded. We never knew. You see, they came in, we patched them up, we prayed over them, and they went back out. Or they didn't. She looked at her hands. So many boys, so many songs I still remember. The lucidity held for 47 seconds. Kaylin counted. Then Marin turned to him with that stranger's smile. Are you the new orderly? You have kind eyes. Young man. The moment was gone, but on the tape, it would live forever. 2 in the morning. The nursing home corridor was quiet except for the soft shuffle of the night nurse's shoes and the distant sound of someone's television playing reruns of Lawrence Welk. Kaylin slumped in the chair beside his mother's bed. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. The smell of industrial cleaner and chicken broth hung in the air. Aurelia sat on the other side of the bed, her suitcase plugged into a wall outlet, charging. The machine needed power every 8 hours. How do you do this? Kaylin asked. His voice was hoarse from exhaustion. Every day, waiting for moments that might never come. You learn patience. I don't have patience. I have anger. It's the only thing that's kept me going. Aurelia was quiet for a moment. The machine hummed. Outside, an owl called from the Douglas fir by the parking lot. Anger is just love that doesn't know where to go, she said finally. You're not angry at the world. Kaylin, you're angry because you love her so much and you can't fix her. He didn't answer. His throat was too tight. On the bed between them. Marin stirred. Her eyes opened. For a moment, just a moment, they were sharp, focused, present. She reached up and took Kaylin's face in both hands. Her palms were cool and papery against his cheeks. My boy, she whispered. My Kaylin. I know you. He couldn't breathe. You came back to me. I never left. Mama. I'm right here. I've always been right here, as her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I keep losing you. I don't want to lose you. I know. Mama, promise me something. Her grip tightened. Promise me you'll keep the fire burning, even when I can't remember to tend it myself. I promise. She pulled him close, kissed his forehead. Her lips trembled against his skin. The lucidity lasted 93 seconds. When it faded, she didn't remember the conversation, but Aurelia had caught every word. Thursday afternoon, the campus quad, the maple trees had dropped half their leaves, and the maintenance crew had raked them into piles along the walkways. The air smelled like autumn wood smoke and dying leaves and the promise of rain. Kaylin walked toward the library. Backpack slung over one shoulder. The dark circles under his eyes had taken up permanent residence. Thatcher stepped into his path. 2 others flanked him, Marcus and Dev. Fellows Kaylin had known since freshman year. Folks he used to eat lunch with. Used to complain with about professors and dining hall food and everything that seemed important before his mother got sick. Well. Thatcher's smile didn't reach his eyes. Haven't seen you around much lately. Been busy. Yeah, we heard. Marcus crossed his arms. Heard you've gotten awfully friendly with that standoffish Vane girl. The one whose family, what was it you said, profits off sick folks? Kaylin's jaw tightened. That was before I knew the whole story. What story? Thatcher laughed. Rich girl bats her eyes and suddenly you forget everything. Forget what her people did to yours. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you turned your back on us, on everything you believed. The quad was crowded. Students walking between classes, leaves crunching under their feet. Some of them were watching now, whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. Kaylin thought about explaining, thought about telling them everything: the suitcase, the device, the recordings, the nursing home, but Aurelia's secrets weren't his to share, so he didn't say anything. He just walked around Thatcher, toward the library, where Aurelia was waiting at their usual table by the window. "Kaylin," Thatcher called after him, "you're making a mistake." He didn't turn around. Urt. History 101. Friday morning. Kaylin wasn't in this class, but he'd heard the commotion from the hallway, voices raised. A camera flash, someone saying Miss Vane in that hungry way reporters had. He pushed through the doorway. A man with a press badge stood at the front of the room, camera raised. A woman beside him held a notepad, pen poised. The professor stood frozen at his podium, clearly unsure what to do. Miss Vane. Just one photo for the Gazette. Eccentric millionaire, heiress attends community college. Our readers would love to hear your story. Aurelia sat in her usual corner seat, the golden suitcase clutched against her chest. Her face was paler than usual, her breathing shallow. The machine hummed faster than normal. The camera flashed again. She flinched. Kaylin crossed the room in 4 strides. She said no. The reporter turned. "And you are someone who's asking you to leave, politely. This is a public institution. Son, we have every right. She has a medical condition. The stress isn't good for her." Kaylin stepped between the camera and Aurelia, blocking the shot. "Take your story somewhere else." The reporter's eyes narrowed. Then he looked past Kaylin at Aurelia, small, fragile, clearly unwell. "Fine." He lowered the camera. "But this isn't over, Miss Vane. Folks have questions about where your family's money goes." They left. The classroom buzzed with whispers. Kaylin turned to Aurelia. She was gripping the suitcase handle so hard her knuckles had gone white. The machine inside whirred faster than he'd ever heard it. "You all right?" She nodded, but her hands were shaking. "Let me walk you out." The weeks blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Aurelia stopped coming to campus. Too weak. The walks exhausted her. She attended classes by video when she could, which wasn't often, but she never missed a visit to Marin. Even when Kaylin had to push her wheelchair down the nursing home hallway. Even when her voice dropped so low the recording device had to be held inches from her lips. Even when the machine in her chest alarmed twice in one afternoon, sending nurses running. "You should rest," Kaylin said one evening. They sat on the nursing home porch, watching the fog roll in from the harbor. The smell of salt and pine hung in the air. Somewhere in town. The church bells rang 6 o'clock. "So, is she?" Aurelia nodded toward the window, where Marin sat watching Wheel of Fortune with the sound off. "Your mother doesn't have much time in the light, neither do I. We understand each other." The fog thickened. The lighthouse beam struggled to cut through it. "I want you to know something," Aurelia said quietly, "about what happened in class, when you confronted me. Don't. I don't deserve. That's not your call to make." She turned to face him. "I'm not angry at you. I wasn't then. I'm not now. Why, I humiliated you, in front of everyone. Because you were hurting, and hurt folks sometimes hurt others without meaning to." She pulled her cardigan tighter. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving. I just want to let it go, that's all." Kaylin stared at the fog. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted. "Let things go. You'll learn. When you have to." She paused. "When there's no time left to hold on to anything except what really matters." The lighthouse beam swept through the mist. One rotation, two. On the third pass, Aurelia's hand found his on the armrest of the wheelchair. Her grip was weaker than last week, noticeably weaker. "Kaylin." "Yeah. There's something I haven't told you yet." His stomach dropped. "The doctors called this morning. My last blood work came back." She took a breath. The machine in her chest whirred and clicked. 6 months was optimistic. I have maybe 3 weeks now, maybe less. The final week arrived without warning. Monday, Aurelia collapsed in the nursing home hallway. The machine in her chest alarmed a high, sharp sound that sent orderlies running. Paramedics came. She refused to go to the hospital. "Not yet," she whispered. "There's still time." Wednesday, she collapsed again, this time in the sunroom, mid-sentence, her hand still holding Marin's. This time, she didn't refuse. Friday, Dr. Rosalind Ketch stood in the hospital corridor, chart in hand, and told Kaylin what he already knew. Days, maybe a week if the Lord's merciful. Kaylin's hands hung at his sides. He didn't know what to do with them. Does she know? She's known longer than any of us. Saturday morning. Aurelia's hospital room. The machines beeped in steady rhythm. The smell of antiseptic and floor wax hung in the air, outside the window. Seagulls circled against a gray sky, their cries muffled by the glass. The golden suitcase sat on the chair beside her bed, still connected to her chest by those thin tubes. She looked small, smaller than he'd ever seen her. The hospital gown hung loose on her frame. Her collarbones jutted out like the ridges of the cliffs at Foggy Harbor. "I have a request," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Kaylin leaned closer. The chair creaked under him. "I want to see Marin one more time." And then she paused, took a breath that seemed to cost her everything. "The lighthouse. One more sunset. The doctors won't let you leave. I'm dying. Kaylin." That ghost of a smile crossed her face. "What are they going to do? Give me detention?" He couldn't say no. Sunday afternoon. Tidecrest Manor. The church bells from St. Matthew's rang across the harbor 2 o'clock, calling the afternoon prayer group. The sound drifted through the open windows, mixing with the smell of pot roast from the cafeteria. Kaylin pushed Aurelia's wheelchair down the hallway. The golden suitcase rested on her lap, humming its mechanical heartbeat. Nurses looked up as they passed. Nobody tried to stop them. Waverly Pemberton stood at the sunroom door. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Mrs. Ashford is having a good day," she said quietly. "Better than she's had in weeks?" Kaylin nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Marin sat by the window, watching the ocean. Late afternoon light fell across her face, catching the silver in her hair. She wore the blue cardigan Kaylin had bought her for Christmas 3 years ago. She turned when the wheelchair rolled in. For a moment. Her eyes went blank, that familiar stranger's gaze. Then something shifted. Something cleared. "Lily," her voice cracked. "You look tired, sweetheart." Aurelia reached for her hand. Marin took it, their fingers intertwined. "I am tired. Mama." "Then rest. Rest here with me a while." They sat together in silence. The recording device was on the table, but Kaylin didn't turn it on. Some moments weren't meant to be captured. They were meant to be lived. 5 minutes passed. 10. Marin's thumb stroked the back of Aurelia's hand. Slow, gentle. Then her eyes changed, sharpened. The fog lifted. "You're not Lily," Marin said softly. "Are you, dear?" Aurelia's breath caught. "No, Mama, I'm not." Marin didn't pull her hand away. She held tighter. But you loved me like she would have. Tears slid down Aurelia's cheeks. She didn't wipe them. I tried my best. Marin lifted Aurelia's hand to her lips, kissed her knuckles, gentle as a blessing. That's enough, she whispered. That's always been enough. The lighthouse. 6:15 in the evening. Kalen pushed the wheelchair up the gravel path. His arms burned. His legs ached. The salt wind cut through his jacket. He didn't care. The Pacific stretched out before them, endless and gray-blue. The fog was thin tonight, just wisps curling off the water. The horizon glowed orange where the sun touched it. Aurelia's breathing was shallow, labored. The machine in the suitcase whirred and clicked, working harder than it should. Here, she said. This is good. He locked the wheelchair brakes, sat down on the bench beside her. The lighthouse beam began its rotation. Aurelia reached into the suitcase. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out a small brass key. When it's time, she said, everything you need is inside. He took the key, cold metal against his palm. Aurelia, no long goodbyes. She shook her head. Never did care for those. The sun touched the water. Gold spilled across the waves. You know, she said after a moment, I used to be angry that I got such a short turn at this life. Her voice faded. She took a breath. The machine whirred faster. Then I figured something out. She turned to look at him. A small candle still lights the room. Doesn't matter how long it burns. Matters what it shows folks while it's lit. The lighthouse beam swept across them. Tell your mother something for me. Next time she's in the light. What's that? Her lips curved. That peaceful, tired smile. Tell her Lily finally made it home. The sun sank lower. The horizon blazed orange, then pink, then the soft purple of evening. Aurelia's hand found his on the armrest. Her grip was barely there, a whisper of pressure. The lighthouse beam swept past. One rotation. Her breathing slowed. 2 rotations. Her grip loosened. 3. Kalen looked at her face. Her eyes were open, fixed on the lighthouse beam as it cut through the gathering dusk. She wasn't breathing. The machine in her chest still hummed. The tube still pulsed. But she was gone. He sat beside her until the stars came out. The foghorn called across the water. The church bells rang 7 o'clock, then 8. He didn't cry. His body wouldn't let him. The weight of it hadn't landed yet, it was still falling, somewhere inside him, looking for a place to crash. The lighthouse beam swept past, again, on his palm, the brass key grew warm from his grip. Inside the golden suitcase. 47 tapes waited, and one question rose up from somewhere deep. What else had Aurelia Vane left behind? 1 week after the lighthouse, Kalen sat on the floor of his converted garage apartment. The golden suitcase open before him. He hadn't been able to touch it until now. It had sat on his kitchen table for 7 days, catching the morning light. Waiting. The brass latches seemed to glow in the lamplight, patient as a prayer. Tonight, he was ready. The brass key slid into the lock. The latches clicked open. The machine was gone. Dr. Ketch had taken it back medical equipment that no longer had a patient. The tubes, the battery pack, the blinking monitors, all removed. What remained was everything else. 47 cassette tapes in neat rows, organized by date, each label in Aurelia's careful handwriting. Some of the ink was smudged, as if she'd written them while her hands shook too badly to hold the pen steady. Mama's Navy Stories, October 3rd. The day she found Kalen, September 15th. Her mother's apple pie recipe, November 2nd. Private Jameson in Motown, October 19th. The lullaby she sang at bedtime, November 8th. Kaylin's fingers moved across the plastic cases. 47 pieces of his mother, preserved in magnetic ribbon. 47 moments of clarity rescued from the fog. The candle on his nightstand flickered. The familiar scent of beeswax filled the small room, the same candles his mother used to buy from the church bazaar every Christmas. He set the tapes aside. Beneath the tapes, a leather journal, worn, well-used, the cover embossed with faded gold letters, The Marin Guide. He opened it. Aurelia's handwriting filled every page. Notes, observations, instructions, the kind of detailed care that came from someone who paid attention. Songs that calm her My Girl by the Temptations. I heard it through the grapevine. Anything Motown from 1964 to 1967. She hums along even when she doesn't know the words anymore. Phrases that help, you're safe here. I'm not going anywhere. Tell me about the hospital in Da Nang. That last one sometimes unlocks 45 minutes of clarity. Foods, she responds to vanilla pudding, the real kind. Not instant, saltine crackers, apple slices, but only Honeycrisp. She won't touch Granny Smith. Says they remind her of something sad. Warning signs. When she starts picking at her sleeve, confusion is setting in. When she hums Amazing Grace, she's trying to remember something important. Give her space, but stay close. Page after page after page. 6 months of observations. 6 months of sitting beside a stranger's mother, learning her rhythms, her patterns, her secret languages. Kaylin turned to the last entry. Dated 3 days before Aurelia died. K came today. M recognized him for 93 seconds. She called him my keeper of the flame. He didn't cry in front of her, but I saw his shoulders shake when he walked out. He's stronger than he knows. He's going to be just fine. Beneath the journal, a manila folder. Legal documents. Dense paragraphs that made his eyes blur, but certain phrases stood out, clear as church bells on a Sunday morning. Tidecrest Manor, Perpetual Care Trust. Funded in perpetuity by the Aurelia Vane Memorial Foundation. Primary beneficiary Marin Ashford. Room 12. In the event of Mrs. Ashford's passing, funds to be redirected to memory care patients without family support. Kaylin's hands trembled as he turned the pages. She hadn't just bought the nursing home, she'd built a fortress around it, a legal structure so solid that no foreclosure, no market crash, no corporate greed could ever touch it. His mother would have a home. Forever, and after his mother was gone, other mothers, other fathers, other grandparents slipping into the fog would have one too. At the bottom of the suitcase, an envelope, plain white, his name written on the front in Aurelia's handwriting. He stared at it for a long time. The wind rattled the garage door, outside. Mrs. Delphi's wind chimes sang their quiet evening song. He opened it. Kaylin, I'm writing this while I can still hold a pen. My hands shake now. The words come out crooked. But I need you to understand something. You were right to be angry at my family. Their money has hurt folks. I can't fix that. But I could take what I inherited and point it somewhere useful. Your mother taught me something these past months, something I didn't expect. Identity isn't memory. It's love. Even when she forgot her own name, she remembered how to be kind, how to hold a hand, how to say, "It's going to be all right," to someone having a hard day. The disease took her facts, but it couldn't touch her heart. You are her legacy. Kaylin. Not because you'll remember her stories, but because you love the way she loves. Stubborn, fierce, without asking for anything in return, I'm leaving you the memory library. Not just your mother's tapes, the whole idea, the method, the mission. There are other families out there losing their people to the fog. Mothers forgetting daughters. Fathers forgetting sons. Whole lifetime slipping away with no one there to catch the pieces. You can be there. Keep building. Keep recording. Keep the fire burning. Don't try to remember me. Try to continue me. With gratitude, Aurelia, P.S. The suitcase is yours now. My grandmother carried it for 30 years. Then I carried it for 2. Now it's your turn. Kalen set the letter down. His chest ached. His eyes burned. But he didn't cry. Not yet. One more thing in the suitcase. A cassette tape wrapped in a pale blue ribbon. The label he'd seen that first night at the lighthouse for Kalen Play Last. He'd been carrying the tape recorder in his pocket all week, waiting. Now he pulled it out, inserted the tape. His thumb hovered over the play button. The candle flame flickered. He pressed play. Static, then her voice. I recorded this the night you stood up for me. The art class, the reporter. That's when I knew I'd picked the right person. A pause. The soft hum of the machine, that steady heartbeat, now silent forever. You're going to feel guilty. That's natural. You spent months being angry at me, and now I'm gone. And you're wondering if you could have done something different, been kinder sooner. Another pause. A breath that rattled slightly. Don't let the guilt swallow you. Use it instead. Let it push you forward. Silence on the tape. Then, a small sound, almost a laugh. Your mother still has moments in the light. Be there for them. And when she's gone, when that day comes, keep going. Other mothers, other fathers, their families deserve what I gave you. Static. Then, softer now. Thank you for letting me be Lily. Even if it was just pretend. It was the closest I ever got to being somebody's daughter. Click, the tape ended. Kalen sat on the floor of his apartment, surrounded by cassettes and documents and a golden suitcase that now belonged to him. The candle on his nightstand flickered. The beeswax smell reminded him of Sunday mornings, of his mother lighting candles before church, of all the quiet rituals that made a life, for those we carry with us. He reached over and lit a second candle beside it. 2 flames now, side by side, one for his mother, one for Aurelia. Outside. The fog rolled in from the harbor. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, visible through his small window. And somewhere in Kalen's mind, a new question took shape. How many other families were out there tonight, watching someone they loved disappear, and who was catching the pieces for them? 1 year later, the sign at the entrance read Aurelia's Lighthouse Memory Care Center. Kalen walked through the front doors of what used to be Tidecrest Manor. The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and yellow roses. Mrs. Henderson still delivered them every Monday from her shop on Main Street. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the hardwood floors. The garden outside had transformed. Coastal wildflowers bloomed in organized beds, California poppies, seaside daisies, purple sage. Bees hummed between the blossoms. Residents sat on benches watching the ocean, some with family members, some alone but not lonely. A new wing extended from the east side of the building. The sign above its entrance, the Memory Library Recording Studio. The church bells from St. Matthew's rang across the harbor. 10 o'clock, Sunday morning. Kalen's office was small, a desk, 2 chairs, a window overlooking the Pacific. On the wall, his psychology degree from Foggy Harbor Community College. The frame bought second-hand from the thrift store on Maple. Next to it, a photograph of Marin in her Navy nurse uniform, holding baby Kalen. On his desk, the golden suitcase. It looked different now. The brass latches had been polished, the scuffs buffed out, but it was the same suitcase Aurelia's grandmother's. Then Aurelia's, now his. Inside, not 47 tapes anymore. Over 200, each one labeled in his handwriting. Margaret Holloway's wedding day memories, March 12th. Harold Whitmore's Korea Stories, April 3rd. Doris Pemberton's Christmas Cookie Recipe, June 8th. 200 families. 200 libraries built. 200 people who wouldn't disappear without someone catching the pieces first. 6 months after Aurelia died, Marin had followed. A quiet Tuesday afternoon, the sunroom, late light through the windows, the smell of pot roast drifting from the cafeteria, and Marvin Gaye playing soft on the radio. Kaylin had been holding her hand when her eyes cleared one final time. "My boy," she'd whispered, "I'm so proud of you." "I know, Mama." "Did I ever tell you what your name means?" He'd smiled through the tears. "Yeah, you told me." "Good." Her grip tightened for just a second. "Keep the fire burning. Kaylin, promise me." "I promise." She'd closed her eyes. The last thing she heard was her own voice, playing from one of her tapes the lullaby she used to sing when he was small. She'd hummed along, just a few notes, then she was gone. Now she rested in the Foggy Harbor Cemetery, next to Aurelia. 2 headstones on the hill overlooking the lighthouse. Wildflowers grew between them, nobody planted them. They just appeared. Kaylin visited every Sunday after church, brought flowers, sat on the bench between them. He didn't talk much, didn't need to. They knew. Late afternoon. The lighthouse cliff. Kaylin sat on the old wooden bench, the golden suitcase beside him. The fog was rolling in, soft and gray, muting the colors of the sunset. The foghorn called out across the water. A young woman sat next to him. 23, maybe. Dark circles under her eyes, jaw clenched tight, hands balled into fists in her lap. Her name was Sophie. Her grandfather had died of Alzheimer's 3 weeks ago. She'd found Kaylin's program through a church bulletin board, driven 4 hours to Foggy Harbor, walked into his office that morning with shaking hands. "Why didn't anyone help us?" she'd asked, voice cracking. Why didn't anyone tell us we could save his voice before it was too late? Kaylin hadn't answered. He'd just handed her a tissue and said, "Come with me." Now they sat on the cliff, watching the lighthouse beam begin its rotation. Sophie's arms were crossed, her shoulders rigid. "I'm so angry," she said. "At the doctors, at the system, at myself for not doing more." Kaylin nodded. He remembered that anger, still carried some of it. "That's natural," he said. "It means you loved him. What do I do with it now?" He reached into the golden suitcase, pulled out a blank cassette tape and a small recorder the same kind Aurelia had used, handed them to her. Sophie stared at them like she didn't understand. "What am I supposed to do with these?" The lighthouse beam swept past them. Kaylin thought about Aurelia, about his mother, about all the voices now preserved in plastic and magnetic ribbon. "Your grandfather's gone," he said, "but his friends aren't. His neighbors, folks who knew him when he was young, people who have stories you've never heard." He pointed to the recorder. "Build his library. Catch the pieces other folks are still holding, before they slip away too." Sophie turned the tape over in her hands. "Will it help?" Her voice was small. "Will it make the missing him easier?" The lighthouse beam swept past again. "No," Kaylin said honestly, "but it'll give you something to hold when the grief gets heavy. Something real. Something that lasts." Sophie pressed the tape against her chest. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The church bells rang from town. 5 o'clock. Evening service starting soon. Then she looked at him. "How did you learn to do this?" Kaylin glanced at the golden suitcase, at the 47 tapes Aurelia had made, still there at the bottom, beneath all the others. "Someone taught me," he said. "Someone who didn't have much time left. She used every single day like it mattered. What happened to her?" The lighthouse beam swept past. "She's still here." Kaylin touched the suitcase. "Every time I play her voice, every time I do this work, she's still here." The fog thickened. The sun dropped below the horizon. Sophie stood up, tucked the tape and recorder into her jacket pocket. "Thank you," she said. "I don't really understand all of this yet, but thank you." Kaylin nodded. She walked back down the path toward the parking lot. He stayed on the bench. The lighthouse beam kept turning. 12 seconds. Always 12 seconds. Somewhere in the golden suitcase. Aurelia's voice waited on a tape, and somewhere in the nursing home on the hill, a woman with white hair was telling a young volunteer about the day she got married. Her words were being recorded. Her story was being saved. Another piece, caught before it fell. Another flame, passed to another keeper. The foghorn called out across the water, and Kaylin sat there until the stars came out, the golden suitcase warm beside him, the lighthouse beam sweeping steady across the darkening sea. The end. A word at the end. Dear friend, if you've made it this far, I want you to know something. This story wasn't really about a golden suitcase. It wasn't about money or illness or nursing homes. It was about the things we carry. The judgments we make too quickly. The apologies we offer too late. And the quiet, stubborn love that outlasts everything, even memory itself. We all have someone slipping away. A parent, a grandparent, a neighbor whose name we haven't spoken in years. So, call someone today. Ask them to tell you a story. Listen close. The folks we love are still here in their voices, their recipes, their laughter. All we have to do is pay attention. Disclaimer: this story, The Golden Suitcase, is an original work of fiction inspired by themes of family, memory, sacrifice, and human connection, created solely for entertainment purposes. This narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, discrimination, or harmful behavior toward any individual or group. All characters, names, locations, institutions, and events depicted herein are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or to actual events or places is purely coincidental and entirely unintentional. The end.